Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the YouTube account and we are going to be breaking down the May tier list. Now, when it comes to the tier list, there are two heroes that are not going to be included in the tier list. And the reason is when you start looking at these two, they are very new. We haven't been through all the iterations of the Cursed Realm and the Nightmare Corridor or the Treasure Scramble to really see the effectiveness of it. Now, overall, where I would gauge Marcial is probably about the SS tier. She's doing a lot of damage. We're starting to see her best in slot in a few of the very big burst teams, but we're not seeing her placing in every one. And then, of course, Laios, I feel like, again, might be the S tier, could even possibly fall into that SS tier. And the reason being, we are seeing them run in conjunction. Both of them are being run together in formations, making a really big difference to having one of these built out versus having both of these. Now, again, a couple different game modes that we are seeing them in, they are being run together. So it is a little bit too early because we know we still do have the exchange. We still have a while before players have access to these heroes on a global spectrum, meaning they can actually get them out of the exchange. So let's hop over, guys, and we'll break down this tier list. And I did bring the cursor back. You'll see it right there moving around. I don't know, for whatever reason, Streamlabs decided to hide the cursor, so we didn't have it. So let's break it down, guys. SSS tier, this is the top tier. These are the biggest heroes that you want to build out when it comes to day one, when it comes to being able to unlock the Stargazer, also the Temple of Time. These are the ones you're looking for. First one, of course, Envy. When you start looking at every place in the AFK Arena, Envy is being used. Envy can be used in formations. And with them being a damage dealer, the bigger that they're built out, the better they're going to perform. And I'm trying not going to say that for every single hero, but any of the primary role of the damage dealer, the more that you build them, the higher attack, the higher physical pierce, the higher the haste, the crit damage amplification, the more damage they're going to do. If you're in a competitive game modes, that is going to be a driving force between being, in the top 10% or the top 5% or the top 1%. Is how you do have these heroes built out. So Envy, again, still coming in as number one, and it's pretty cool to see because Liberta finally moved to number two since release. Liberta has been absolutely number one as a support hero, damage dealer, but also does an incredible amount of healing, a lot of survivability. Now, with Aurelia is another one where we see a lot of support. When it comes to having a multitude of teams, a lot of these are going to be the support classifications. As I kind of look down the row and seeing this, it is imperative when you start looking at having 5 teams, support is running usually 2, 3, possibly even 4 slots, depending on the formation. So it's kind of crazy how imperative we do see the support. Aurelia is a big priority. Then we have Lucilla. Now, Lucilla and Liberta are running together in a lot of formations because of the ability to resurrect. That is the big thing with Lucilla. Not only, the able to be a support to amp some damage up, but also the ability to have the resurrect makes it vital within the Treasure Scramble. Now, Athalia sliding a little bit down and coming in at number 2 when we look at the Awakened heroes, still does an incredible amount of damage. And I want to point out too, is even if you still have Athalia, if you're building Athalia, finish the hero out in its entirety. Having a built Awakened hero, still going to make a big difference. And Athalia is still being used in almost every formation. It's funny because the couple that we're not seeing her in, Envy replaced a lot of those. And again, kind of the power creep with the damage dealer. Also remember that Athalia is well over a year old. We had Zora, which actually came out, about 4 months ago now. So Athalia was last year's Celestial that came out for the Awakened hero. Now, when it comes to Draconic, Lan is still the support. Again, utility-wise in here doing incredibly well. Now, Lan, you do not have to engrave if you don't want to, but if you do not engrave her, the engraving is the really big piece for the PvP. If you're looking at the Cursed Realm and the Nightmare Corridor, doesn't really need that engraving on there, but definitely when it comes to Treasure Scramble, competitive nature needs to be built. Now, Misha is another one. Utility when it comes to building out collections with defense. The higher the defense, the better the hero is going to perform. And again, when you start looking at support, that's right. Almost the entire SSS tier is support heroes. Damia, again, another one that's going to be in the upcoming event for the Magician's Hat. If you do not have Damia built, especially when you start putting on the Mahira collection, is an absolute game changer for survivability. And then Lava Tune, some formations doing incredibly in damage, but also a massive buffer within AFK Arena. So looking at the S tier, this is the second tier. This is still going to be a lot of the primary heroes that you're looking to build. We'll get a lot more into some of our, dimensional heroes in here, but also looking at some of kind of the niche heroes, like right here with Randy. Definitely a niche hero, but really broken in a lot of formations. Still best in slot in a lot of different formations. And if you're looking to make a lot of progression, if you're newer to AFK Arena, Randy will carry teams. It will carry teams in the entirety. Again, class specific, looking at support heroes, it is kind of broken. Now, Rimuru is one of the first ones that we see with the dimensional heroes, and as a mage does provide the support capacity. That is the big thing with Rimuru. And you'll see a couple of these, looking at Hilduin, looking at a few other ones that are mages, but do an incredible amount and really do have niche formations when it comes to being a mage. Now in here, we have Amelia, crowd control, energy regeneration, super huge. We have some more support in here with Jerome as a buffer within the Lightbearer faction, but also buffers within a lot of other factions. Does very well to amplify damage. Same with Shuna. Ivan is still a really good combination, still used in a ton of different places. And again, if you're an earlier player to AFK Arena, Ivan run together with Randy is just simply broken. Now, Awakened Heroes, that is right. The Awakened version of Leica drops down to that SS tier. So she did kind of tear down a little bit. And you also notice that Zora, again, the effectiveness and what we're seeing with the power creep, moved down a little bit. We've seen her really as a backup, not really a primary damage dealer, but as kind of a backup damage dealer. And then Palmer in here, very unique with the crit damage amplification. Nox is being run in quite a few formations. A lot of players were wondering, is Nox as good as people say? Having it built, he does exceptionally well. We see him in campaign formations. We see him in the Treasure Scramble. We do see him in a couple different formations within the Curse Realm, the Nightmare Corridor, still having a really prevalent place within a couple different game modes. Then, like I said, with Zora starting to move down a little bit, we do have the Awakened version of Thorin, and then we have Skylin. So Thorin is another one very unique in what he does, with the ability to actually die in battle and have the little Storm Guard or the Storm Cloud that relies and does damage. Now, a lot of players do run the SP effect that he possesses, which does, I believe, buff up Graveborn heroes. But overall, we're still seeing him in a lot of formations. Same with Skylin. Skylin is another one. The damage is kind of broken when it comes to the Highborn Draconic heroes, Skylin, and even looking at Halia. They do an incredible amount of damage. If you can borrow them like I do, you could go ahead and do that. And then we have the regular dragon hero or the draconic hero that is not the Highborn. And this one is pretty broken when it comes to Scion. Scion is another one that is kind of best in slot in a lot of different formations, working incredibly well. Again, as a damage dealer, really seeing a rise out and really very early within the hero itself. Now, looking in here, we do have Aethys in here. Again, when you think of a really strong tank, honestly, does incredibly well. Then we have, I keep calling him Lancaster. I know his name is not Lancaster, but still, again, seeing a little bit, I feel like it might be a little bit too early in there to see, and I think it's Lysander is the proper pronunciation, but every time I look at him, that's just kind of what comes to mind. But again, starting to see kind of as a sub DPS, not really as a primary DPS, but also the buffing role in a bunch of different varieties, putting him as a rook, putting him as a king. It seems like he's going to be very niche, and I feel like it's going to be burned out with him very quickly. Now, we do have Ren in here, again, an incredible powerhouse. If you have the survivability, Ren does work incredibly well. Then we do have Naruko in here. Again, tiny tank, still doing well with Nadia, still seeing it as a buffer. We have the Awakened version of Shamira starting to come down a little bit, just because, again, already well over a year old. The Awakened version of Iran. Now, this is a very strong substitute. If you don't have Scion, if you don't have Skylin, the Awakened version of Iran is the substitute for majority of those formations. Working in kind of the same damage dealer, not going to do as much damage as Skylin, not going to do as much damage really as Scion, but still does a considerable amount. Now, the Awakened version of Sophia, support kind of holding its own, actually moved up in the tier list. Then we have Gavis and we have Trishia. Trishia still holding in here. And I'm almost looking at this, and I believe I might have forgotten Valkyrie. So give me a minute. Let me just go ahead and add Valkyrie. All right, so there we go. I had the picture down below, so I just had to grab it. And right there she is. She actually comes in before Skylin. again, as a very powerful Draconic hero, very similar to what we see with Scion. Again, works in a lot of different formations. We're seeing him in the Curse Realm, Treasure Scramble, and also the Nightmare Corridor, absolutely being used in a lot of different formations. But again, we rounded out the SS tier, so definitely had to add that. I noticed really quickly that she was not in there. So looking at our next tier, which is the S tier. Now, these are going to be heroes that are playing a lot of support roles. If you don't have all of the heroes that are in that SS tier, these are going to be some of the niche heroes that we do see in formations. When we start looking at all the iterations and all the different formations, you know, within all three of the primary game modes, these are going to be used in some of the niche places. Now we have the Chad right here, which is Vithiel, again, as a damage dealer, as a buffer, still does incredibly well as a substitute, still does work in formations. We have Adrian and Elise, does require the plus 40 signature item, but still does incredibly well when it comes to damage amplification. Now, Hildwyn is one when it comes to a mage, again, as a mage, plays a very strong support role, has the ability to do a considerable amount of damage, but the shielding aspect in there, damage mitigation, everything else, is what really makes Hildwyn shine. Now, you notice in here the awakened version of Lucius, he is quickly falling out of formations, unfortunately, that we're not seeing him in a lot of places anymore since the release of Envy. Again, starting to fulfill the role that he was kind of filling, and we're also noticed with the awakened version of Baden and a couple other ones, they are starting to drop down the tier list. Same with the awakened version of Belinda. I mean, this hero is already, 2 going on 3 years old. Not really seeing as much as a carry, still used in a lot of campaign formations, but when it comes to some of the regular game modes, meta, again, in really the power creep, has taken it over. Now, Nyla used to be best in slot when she came out. Now it's kind of niche. Again, kind of a niche formation where she does a considerable amount of damage, but it is on one solid rotation. Same with the Draconic version of Gwen. It used to be an absolute just monster. Now with power creep, we're not seeing her, just kind of here and there. Damaris for the crowd control. We have Kelton in here again for the crowd control. Hypo Kelton is still the big one. Even though we did get Envy, Envy will do incredibly well, but Kelton will be one that fills out the second team. Meleon still staying very relevant because of the crazy amount of Draconic heroes that we're seeing released. And then, of course, we have Rosaline, which is going to amplify the stats and also the ultimate ability of a single target. Ulna still in here again for that survivability aspect, and Ulna also running in there with the awakened version of Iran. We see it in there with Skyland. We see it with a couple other ones, including Scion. That does work incredibly well, kind of keeping her relevant. Now, Eugene, again, still one of those heroes that has a couple niche formations, not seeing an incredible amount of use. Rain, the exact same if you don't have everyone built. Rain for that 30% damage amplification, still doing pretty well. Lady Simona and Goran. Goran seems like he should be a little bit higher just because of the energy regeneration, but they did make him a mauler, so that was kind of his drawback. Rowan is still in here. We still do have Mortis as a buffer, Scarlet as a burst, and then we have Iran in here as a burst, and then Silas as a pretty decent immunity, but also as the buffer. Now, the rest of the tiers in here, we're just going to go through pretty quick so you can take a look at them. Most of them, and you'll see that a lot of the heroes like Sheltier, only place that Sheltier is really being used right now is within the Treasure Scramble. Does incredibly well, but didn't really fit into and not seeing a lot of use in different game modes. Same with Vika. Vika has one formation that's kind of a niche formation. Outside of that, not really being used anywhere. A lot of these were some of the best in slots, even looking at like a Matria. They used to be the best in slot in a lot of different formations, and unfortunately, again, the power creep kind of takes them down. Now, the Awakened version of Thane, again, kind of niche in one formation. The Awakened version of Baden, niche. But again, they're slowly being replaced. Even the Awakened version of Entendre is another one that is kind of regularly being replaced in a couple different formations. Miro, which was the only and the last regular 4-faction hero that we have seen in 2025. Yes, it has been that long. Mira never really found a place in any formation and now is just used for the Greyborn Tower exclusively, not seeing a lot of really driving force in there. Now, original version of Baden, again, still kind of niche with the other Trishia. I was drawing a blank on the name, but with Trishia, again, still kind of being niche. The C tier, these are going to be your tower formation heroes. Wouldn't really focus and build them out at all. And then, of course, the D tier, which we call the Walker tier. Still waiting for the Awakened version of Walker that's coming out in 2025. That might be a spoiler alert if it actually does happen for the Wilders, but you never know. because AFK Arena's been doing some crazy things, including releasing the new Ghoulish Gallery and the new collections that are coming pretty soon. So guys, that's going to do it for today's video, looking at our tier list that we drop every single month. Very cool to see some of the changes in here. Some heroes coming up, some moving down. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.